Well, we are officially in Mexico. Got my passport stamped. Let's run our little test here. Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the Speedy's Garage YouTube channel. Last time we got the 2.7 liter supercharger installed and my startup tune actually did very well. The fuel trims were really close, which is important. Didn't get any check engine lights on about a 20 to 30 minute drive. No leaks, no problems. I got the coolant system. That's kind of the big thing you want to watch with this when you're switching superchargers or messing with the cooling system, is make sure you get it bled very well, to keep an eye on things for a few drive cycles to make sure nothing weird happens. All that's good to go. I had my sensei, is what I call him. It's Mike from OST Dyno. He's who trained me on how to tune these cars. I had him look over my startup tune. He said it looked good, recommended a couple of small tweaks here and there. So now I feel comfortable going out and sort of load testing the car, we're gonna call it. So we're gonna make a quick trip down to Mexico today and see how she does. I guess the $1 million question everyone's going to have is, can I tell the difference? And so far, just cruising around, the biggest thing I'm noticing is it feels like it gets into more boost sooner. And that sort of makes sense if you think about it. You got a bigger supercharger, so you're going to get more air with less throttle. And so that's sort of what I'm noticing. You guys know I drive this car a lot, so I've got a pretty good sense for how it felt before. And that's really what I'm noticing so far. The other big question people are probably going to have is, well, with the 2.7 supercharger and a 285 pulley, are you going to make too much boost for pump gas? And the answer is probably yes. So I'm going to run E85 most of the time. I'm lucky to have it all around where I live. There's 5 or 6 gas stations that sell it. I've got my favorite that I've tested, and it almost never tests below E85. Sometimes it's even above that. So good to go there. But you guys that have been watching the channel, y'all know that I like to run 93 through it occasionally, just for peace of mind. In my mind, it kind of cleans out the fuel system. And I base that on reading some manuals of factory flex fuel vehicles, and they recommend running a tank of just gasoline every once in a while. And there's got to be a reason for that. So that's what I'm planning on doing, and for that, I'll run my flex fuel tune. And based on what I see today with our testing, it's about 65 degrees out, so today's a really good, it's a cooler day, it's dry, the DA is probably going to be pretty good. I would guess it's around 500 or 800, so it'll be a good test for the car with the new supercharger. I can kind of get a feel for, a lot of people think of boost, and that's how the car measures it with the gauges, and that's fine. I made about 16 to 17 pounds of boost with the old setup. I'm curious what this one will make now, but the real measure is, at least for these cars and the tuning, is air charge. And what you're measuring there is air flow. And it kind of makes sense if you think about it, because what if I put a big cam in the car? My boost pressure might actually go down, but my air charge will go up because it's breathing in more air. So that's a really good way in a tune to measure things like spark or fueling, for example, which in the Dodge platform, that's what they use. It's milligrams, and it's really, I'm going to oversimplify this, but it's really just measuring airflow. And so I think that's a really good way to do it in the tuning. When I do the flex fuel stuff and put 93 in it just to keep the fuel system clean, just to be on the safe side, I will probably run it in 500 horsepower mode. And it's nice to be able to do that because it's still fun to drive, and I won't have to worry about if I accidentally decide to go wide open throttle or something. Probably nothing bad's going to happen. And I am going to be super conservative on the gasoline portion of that tune versus the E85 portion. So most of the time I'm going to run my E85 tune. Well, let's get out here to Mexico. We're almost there. Do a quick test. Well, we are officially in Mexico. Got my passport stamped. Let's run our little test here. See how we do. saw 20 pounds of boost on the dash. And honestly, that's exactly what I was shooting for. I didn't want to go too much past that because number one, even though this is a red eye / demon, I always say that because they're the same engine in this thing, they do have a limit. They're stronger than regular Hellcat, and the newer Hellcat motors I think are better than the earlier ones, but there is a limit, and I got to be careful of the fuel system. I don't want to max that out and end up getting into a situation with the fuel system. So that was a good hard pull. I can definitely feel a difference in the power the car is making. It skidded the tires there at about 60 miles an hour, so that was a third to fourth pull. So let's get back to the United States, check our data log. I took a quick peek at the data logs, and I just had to make a little bitty tweak at the higher end of the injector pulse width scale to, it was pulling too much fuel. I like mine to be negative, you know, at the top of the RPM range, wide open throttle, like -3 to -5, and it was actually like -12. So it's real simple. You just do a little bit of math and took out 7%. Got that squared away. Everything else looks really good. It's making 20 pounds of boost, and like I said, DA, I'll check it when we get back to the shop, but I think the DA is probably around 700 or 800. That's a guess. It's 67 degrees out. A really not humid day. Really nice, actually. Really nice day. I need to ask Mike from OST about the fuel pressure. What I am seeing is the car is commanding 80 psi, and at the upper RPM ranges it's dropping back to maybe 68, occasionally 65. So if it were dropping down to 60, I would think I need to do like a JMS, maybe a JMS booster for one of the pumps or something like that. I need to ask Mike what they normally do on a build similar to this. It's making about 1900 milligrams of air charge, which is pretty healthy. I don't know how much power it is, but it's quite a bit, I would say. I can definitely feel a pretty big difference between the original Supercharger. The other thing I'm going to mention is, like I said, even at light throttle, it feels much more responsive, and I've noticed it's even that way out of boost, and I believe that's from that SDG Motorsports billet end plate. So it's letting a whole lot more air come in, even out of boost. It's going to come in and go through the throttle body, and that has really kind of sharpened up things at part throttle and make things feel more crisp. And the other big thing I've noticed is just the sound of the Supercharger. I don't know how to describe it, but it just sounds more smoother or more solid. I don't know. I'm assuming it's because Jesse probably, you know, I'm sure he did, mic'd everything and has everything to very tight tolerances, and it's hand assembled rather than, you know, an assembly line Supercharger like it would have been from the factory. But I can tell a difference in the sound. It's much smoother and solid sounding. That's the best way I can describe it. Well, I'm going to get back to the shop. I will show you guys a couple of screenshots of the data logs when I get back over there, so I can kind of show you what I'm seeing. But I'm going to call this project a success. I'm back at the shop taking a look at these data logs, and like I said, I did review them out on the road because I did need to make a couple of adjustments. The main things I'm looking for, firstly, I was looking at the fuel trims were dialed in. I like mine to be, you know, cruising around, which is just light throttle stuff, between plus and minus 3%. And what that means, kind of in, you know, quick answer, is it's how much the fuel or the computer is adding or removing fuel from the scale of the fuel injectors. If you've got it scaled correctly, it'll be just a minimal amount, you know, plus or minus 3% is what I like. If I were tuning someone else's car, I'd probably be happy with plus or minus 8% because varying weather conditions and all kinds of stuff sort of impact those fuel trims. And then at wide open throttle, I like it to always be just a little bit negative. Mine started off around negative 12%, and I got it dialed in to about negative 5%, which is what I prefer. Just a little bit negative so that I know it's never adding fuel, it's always taking fuel away. And beyond that, I was curious what the air charge would be, and it was around 1900, which is making some steam, and that's again how much airflow is going through the motor, and that equated to in today's weather. I did check the DA, and it was right around 1100, positive 1100, right about 20 pounds of boost. And cooler air like 0 DA, it might make 21. I'm going to have to keep an eye on that fuel pressure. That's the other thing I was looking at, is how did the fuel pumps look? How did the fuel pump duty cycle look? How did the injector duty cycle look? And all of that looked fine. I never want my injector duty cycle to go over 85%. I was nowhere near that. I don't like the fuel pump duty cycle to be maxed out. In this case, it is. It's at 89%, which is max. So that tells me I'm getting on the edge of what my fuel system can handle with the upgraded supercharger. And I was curious what the fuel pressure was doing. And I'm commanding 80 PSI, and it was dropping down to around 70. I need to talk to Mike about that and see how low is too low. The injector pulse width wasn't going up, so that means the injectors were still happy. So it's kind of like an inverse, right? If fuel pressure goes down, the injector pulse width goes up. It's telling the injector to spray longer so that you're compensating for not enough fuel pressure. You don't really want to get in that situation, and there's actually a safety limit on these cars where if it hits too high of an injector pulse width at certain RPMs, it will open the bypass valve and bleed off boost to save the motor. It's a nice safety feature to have, but you want to avoid that obviously because you're losing your horsepower. So I'm going to have to think about that. Everything else looked great. And one other thing you want to check for before I forget to mention it is whenever you change pulleys or superchargers on your Hellcat, you want to make sure that black key still works the way you expect it to. It's designed to limit torque, and it's basically a torque multiplication table by RPM. So you want to make sure that gets rescaled. I've heard of some tuners forgetting to do that. And the reason it's important is because if you start making more horsepower, more boost or whatever into the car, and you're in black key mode, it doesn't go into power enrichment, which means it's not adding fuel. It kind of runs, for some reason they had it running stoic for these cars, and I haven't ever found a way to change that. I asked Mike about it a couple of times, and he said he hasn't ever found a way to change it either. So you don't want to make too much boost in that condition because it can be lean depending on how much boost it is. And I think from the factory they're comfortable with about 5 PSI. And so you want to make sure after you change pulleys or superchargers or whatever that you actually test black key mode to make sure it's around 4 to 5 PSI, and you're good to go. I rescaled mine and it is, so that's good on mine too. Easy upgrade. I'm glad it sort of fell into my lap. Thank you, Jesse over at SDG Motorsports, for doing such a good job putting that supercharger back together. It sounds great, actually better than factory. Like I said, it sounds more solid, and I guess it's because it's hand assembled and measured, so everything's been mic'd out and spec'd. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did. Be sure to check us out on Instagram. It's at Speedys_garage, as well as the website, www.speedysgarage.net, and hopefully I'll see you out there. Shoo! That looks good.